And basically I was touching on the topic that sometimes brothers ask this question, that when we are meeting someone for the very first time with the intention of marriage and nikah, what kind of questions should we ask? Now the key of this meeting is, don't make this meeting like a job interview. Yeah? Don't have a set of questions there, like you're interviewing her. Okay, sister, what do you like? Okay, sister, do you wear hijab? Or sister, you're not interviewing her. Right? That's the key thing. Just basically think of it to be like a normal conversation. Just have a normal conversation with her. Obviously, during the meeting, then you could put these questions in. You could put forward these questions that, okay, do you want children? Don't you want children? What are your hobbies? What are your habits? These kind of things you could mention, but not like have a, paper full of 100 questions and then ask her one by one, like an interview, and then ask her, or then she'll ask you at the end, or have I got the job or something like that. No, don't make it like that. Just make it informal, laid back, and obviously during the conversations, then you could ask these questions. And sometimes the beauty is that sometimes you don't need to ask these questions, but just by speaking to her, you know answers to half of these questions here. Yeah. So just make it as informal as possible. Obviously, naturally, the boy's going to be a bit kind of embarrassed. The girl will also be embarrassed as well. So another reminder, this is for younger brothers and sisters, that even if the girl doesn't speak to you, or what I mean speak, she doesn't give you clear answers, or she gives you one-word answers that yes, no, then again, don't be put off by it. Don't think, oh, she doesn't like me. Because you need to put yourself into her shoes, that this probably will be the first time she's speaking to a guy. So obviously you don't really expect her to be proper jolly and open up and tell you all her secrets from before. Obviously she's going to be a bit kind of embarrassed, or she will have that kind of haya there. She's not going to be that opening up to you. So even if she was to give you a one-word answer and say yes, no, she's not communicating, she's kind of looking down, she's not giving the eye contact and so on, then don't take that as a sign that, oh, she's not interested in me, let's move on to the next person. No, actually it's just natural. Yes, so you don't just rely on that. Obviously ask these questions, and obviously you can determine whether this particular person is the one who you want to marry. Now there's a list of questions here. These questions are not exhaustive in terms of, it's not the only questions you can ask. There's so many other questions you can ask. But I've just mentioned a few here with regards to concept of marriage, expectations from marriage. What do you want to achieve from this marriage? What's your intention? Certain things about goals in life. You could ask, okay, we're going to get married, but what do you want? Are you happy just to stay at home, or do you want a career yourself? Now, if she wants a career, then again, you need to probably talk about it. Okay, is there a career which is going to have an effect on our marriage? Is she going to be traveling all the time, and she's going to hardly be at home? These kind of things you need to ask. Punctual with namaz, obviously it's good to obviously ask about prayers and so on. Again, as I mentioned early on, that even if she was to say, I'm only praying twice a day or 3 times a day, but you could see some kind of change in her. You could see that actually she is a good person, but she's probably not practicing as much now, but you could work on her, and then inshallah within a matter of months, if you get married, then she will be praying 5 times a day. So these are some questions you could ask about Islamic activities. Has she been to any lectures or talks or courses, or these kind of little things? Because by asking these questions, and if she was to give an answer, yes, I have, then you could obviously instantly derive that actually, she is, even though she may not be practicing, but she's got that keenness and this eagerness to learn about your deen. So you've got something to work on. So you could then obviously think about, okay, that's something to work on. Then when we get married, I could take her to further more courses and lectures and talks, and in that way she can get more near to the deen, religion, she may be more practicing. So these kind of questions you can ask, like some example, courses and so on. These questions you can ask. Right, it's too small there, but basically, these kind of things about what is the source of income and is your income halal. So this, generally speaking, is going to be mainly asked by wives, by the sisters to brothers, that what is the source of your income? Like what kind of job, your occupation? Are you involved in something which is unlawful and haram in Islam? So these kind of things. And it's very important that wives or sisters in particular, they kind of ask their husbands about their finance, about where you're going to get the money from, about your work, about your job. Is it one of those stable jobs, or is it one of those unstable ones? Is it one of those, like, get some brothers, they don't really have any stable jobs. They work here a few months and they leave, then they go to another place, they work and so on, then they leave. Now these kind of things, the sister in particular will have to weigh up that does she want to actually be or get married to someone whose job is unstable, his income is unstable. Obviously, one of the reasons why marriages break up is when it comes to the finance side. Because obviously the wife, she's got her own rights, she's got her own expenses, she wants something, but the husband doesn't have enough money to provide for her. She may want a holiday, but the husband doesn't have any money to provide for her. She may want, like a sari or a new shalwar kameez, whatever, but the husband doesn't have enough to provide it. Now, don't get me wrong, what the wife is asking is not unlawful, because we're going to look at it later. That's one of the rights she has. She has rights of accommodation and clothing. If her clothing are all tattered and ripped and she doesn't have anything, she could actually ask her husband for it. She's not being demanding here, she's not being oppressive here. But obviously, if the husband's job is unstable, he's not working regularly, or he's working but it's a haram job, unlawful job, then it has an effect on the marriage. So, these things the sister in particular should ask before she gets married. Again, taking loans, a big problem. A lot of brothers in particular, they have a habit of taking out loans from the banks or just from anyone. And then what happens is that over time, when the husbands find it difficult to pay off the loan, and they have to take out another loan, or bailiffs come down their house and takes their belongings and their possessions, it has a very big burden on the marriage. The big problem is obviously husband's all the time thinking about his loan, and he then starts arguing with his wife. Wife obviously argues back. The wife is telling him that not to take out these loans, but he's not listening to her. He's taking out loans, credit cards, so many of the things like that. So that has an effect on the marriage, a strain on the marriage. So again, it would be good for the sister in particular to ask, do you have a habit of taking out loans? Do you have credit cards? Do you have any credit card loans which are outstanding? Repaying debts on time. Again, sometimes there's nothing wrong with borrowing money from someone or taking out a loan, but does this person have a habit of paying off the debts on time? Not like 2 months later, 3 months later, and then other people get involved, and other people demanding money, knocking on the door, threatening the family, threatening the wife that, look, if your husband doesn't pay off the debt, I'm going to do this to him, I'm going to do this to you, I'm going to do this to your children. These kind of things. So all these questions, in particular, sisters should ask the suitor before they get married. Obviously about anger and so on, anger issues. Also, living with your family. In other words, if we get married, are we going to be with your parents? I.e., would I be living with the mother-in-law, the father-in-law? So again, these are questions which needs to be asked, whether short-term or long-term. In other words, if you're going to be like, okay, first year or so, we'll be with your parents, but then afterwards, you'll buy a house and then we'll move separately. So these kind of questions need to be asked. Now, there's a section about staying with in-laws and so on. We look at it in a bit more detail. But this is a very, very important question, especially nowadays, for sisters to ask. Now why? Because sometimes what happens is, because sisters don't ask this question, and similarly the boy, he doesn't make it clear to the girl that, look, if we get married, we're going to be living with my parents, because I don't want to leave them, or say, for example, I don't have enough money to buy another house, or more importantly, I don't want to leave them because they're old and I want to look after them. Now, if it's not made clear to the girl who you're marrying that this is what you plan to do, or she doesn't ask, then this is something where there's a contentious issue between the boy and the girl. And this is sometimes where they start arguing, because the girl then takes them in, well, you know, your other brothers have moved out of the house and so on, why don't we move out? Or like she'll give examples, well, my other friends, you know, they're not living with their mother-in-laws or with their father-in-laws, they've moved out, they've got their own house, why can't we do the same? So now it's very, very important that you highlight the issue, whatever your intention is. Now, if your intention is you want to stay with your parents, there's nothing wrong with that. We look at it later, it's actually something good. But you need to make that clear to the girl who you're marrying that, look, this is what's going to happen. This is what we're going to do. Now, if she's happy with it, then that's fine. Obviously, if she's not happy or she's not willing to kind of negotiate, she's not willing to kind of loosen her grip on what she wants, then you probably may think, you know what, it's best that we look elsewhere or we look at somebody else. Sometimes what could happen is that the girl who you want to marry, she's happy short term. She's happy for a couple of years even to stay with her parents, but eventually she wants to move out. So again, the sister needs to make that clear. Okay? No, all these things, what I'm trying to say is that the the boy and the girl, they have rights to ask for these, but the key thing is that they need to come to the middle ground, where they both agree that, okay, the husband may say, okay, you know what, I'll stay with my parents for a couple of years, then we'll move out. Yep. So that's okay. So if the wife or the girl is willing to agree on that, then there's nothing wrong with it. If, say, for example, the boy is adamant that, look, I want to stay with my parents, then it's up to the girl to decide that, okay, does she want to stay with the in-laws? And if she's happy, she doesn't mind, then fair enough. But if she doesn't, then it's probably best that they don't go ahead with it. Okay? So these kind of things. So again, we look at this later on when we look at the issues of in-laws and separate accommodations. Again, another question here, I did touch on this early on as well. Do you suffer from any chronic diseases or illnesses? So again, sometimes the man, he may have some illness, or he may be impotent, as I mentioned earlier, or he may have some kind of illness that actually he's got cancer or something and he's going to pass away soon. Or like the girl's got some problems as well. So any kind of chronic diseases or illnesses, it has to be made clear. It has to be made clear. Nowadays, in particular, with, may Allah forbid, unfortunately, many Muslim men and even Muslim women as well, because they have, unfortunately, some of them, not all, have treaded on the path of immodesty, and obviously they're kind of sleeping around with other men and with other women. So nowadays, these kind of sexual transmitted diseases, not just AIDS and HIV, there's so many other gonorrhea and syphilis and all these different names you hear. So now if somebody's got any of these problems and diseases, he needs to make it clear to the girl he's married, look, you know, this is what happened in the past and unfortunately I have this illness. So you need to make it clear. Similarly, the wife needs to make it clear, just say, or the girl needs to make it clear that if she's got any of these illnesses, she needs to make it clear to the guy she's marrying that, look, this is what happened. Even though she may not have committed something wrong, but somehow it got transmitted to her. So she needs to make it clear that I've got this problem, I've got this illness. Are you happy? Are you willing to go ahead with it? Okay? And as I said, any other illnesses, whether it's the husband being impotent, whether do you want to have children, just say the husband can't have children, or the wife can't have children. The girl can't have children. So again, these things need to be made clear. That look, this is my situation, this is my problem. Are you happy? Are you willing to, drop that right you have of children and having a kid, having a child, and just like basically we get married. So again, if the wife is happy or the guy is happy, then fair enough, they could go ahead with it. Otherwise, it's best that they look elsewhere. So, and then some other questions you could ask about children. Do you want to have children? If not, why? Okay. And also the one below that, do you want to have children in the beginning of your marriage? Sometimes what could happen is that they are married, but the sister, or just say the sister for argument's sake, she's training to be a doctor, and she's doing a lot of traveling. So she probably says to the guy, look, I want to have children, but not now, not for the next few years. Or the guy says, okay, I want to have children, but not for the next few years. I'm training to be a doctor myself, or I'm going to be doing this journey, or whatever. So again, it just needs to be, it's very simple. It just needs to be clarified and communicated that this is what you want. Yeah? As I was explaining, that just because she wears hijab, or just because the guy's got a beard, or he's wearing a top, we shouldn't just say, oh, that's it, they're religious and their mentality is going to be totally religious. Alright? They could be religious, but for one reason or the other, they don't want to have children at that moment in time. Because they're traveling, they're studying, one's training to be a doctor, one's training to be a barrister. They don't want to have a child, or the sister, she wants a career, she wants to basically work, be a doctor, be a GP, and then probably when she's a bit in her 30s or late 30s, then she probably wants to have a child. But again, if she wants to have a career, there's nothing wrong with it, but it just needs to be clarified. Like, I don't want to have children now, but I don't mind having children later. Okay? And even some things about, contraception and so on, that, okay, at this moment in time, you're not going to have children, and then birth control, these kind of issues. So again, it may be, obviously, you won't probably ask this question directly about contraception on the first day, but something like, do you want to have children in the beginning? You could discuss that, but probably will be more later on. And then lastly, what is the best way of raising children Islamically? So as I said, this is just some questions you can ask, but it all depends on what you want. It all depends what kind of girl you're looking for. It depends on the girl, the sister, what kind of husband she's looking for, and accordingly you take the conversation to that direction. Just say, for example, if you just want the sister not to work or just to remain at home, then obviously your mentality will be, or your conversation will be more geared to that side. Or just say, for example, if it's more, or you want children, that is more important, so your conversation will be geared to that side. So I said, this is not like you have to ask these questions, whatever you think. Or just say, for example, the sister was involved in a previous marriage where the husband wasn't financially stable, and that led to lots of problems. So what could happen is that the sister, when she decides to get married the second time and she's meeting another person, she may want to ask questions more about the financial side, or something. So it all depends on what you want. For some, it could be very important about the in-laws things. For the sister, it may be very important. Actually, she doesn't want to live with the in-laws. Yes, so then again, that conversation will be more geared around the in-law side. So it all depends on what you want, what the sister wants, what the brother wants from the girl, and then accordingly the conversation will be taken to that particular direction. Now this takes us on to some other rules here with regards to this meeting, and obviously what happens afterwards. Okay, now I've just mentioned some points here, that there is no dating or trying each other out before they commit to each other seriously. There is to be no physical relationship whatsoever before marriage. Now the modern trend nowadays is that instead of the meeting, now having this kind of meeting, you go to the girl's house, generally speaking, and then you meet her there. The modern trend is obviously to try dating each other. Okay, we'll go for a meal somewhere and then we'll see how everything plans out. Or let's try each other out for a couple of months and then we'll take it from there. Now, strictly speaking, there is no such thing as trying each other out or any kind of physical relationship before the marriage or the nikah. That's very, very important. We'll touch on it in the engagement section as well. There's no such, if you want to see her, then the Islamic way is that you go to her house and you kind of meet her. Okay, that is the proper way, with permission. You can also see her, if you want to jot this rule down, that majority of scholars do say that you can also see her without her permission. So what I mean by that is, just for example, there's a sister who you know, I don't know, who works at Asda or whatever, and you wanna get married to her. So if you go to Asda to see her, then that's okay. That would be allowed. So there's some meeting there. But what is not allowed is like actually having a kind of a date or going away for a weekend together somewhere, or like, you know, trying each other out, or any kind of physical relationship, something like that, that is not allowed, that is not permissible. Okay? Because remember, you need to bear in mind, before the nikah is done, she is still ghair mahram, she's like a strange woman. So you're not allowed to have any kind of contact, any kind of relationship with her. The next question, which is posed as a question, can conditions be placed in marriage? This is again like a new thing as well, a modern thing about placing conditions in the marriage. Like what I mean by conditions, in other words, the boy and girl, they get married, or they agree to get married, I should say, and the condition is that the girl will continue working. I'm just giving kind of a modern day example, like where the boy and girl, they're going to get married, but the girl's family have made it clear that no, we want our daughter to continue with her career. So she's a doctor, we want her to continue practicing as a GP. Or she's a barrister, she's a lawyer, we want her to continue on that field. So they make it clear that look, we'll only give our daughter on the condition that she's going to continue practicing law, she's going to continue basically working whatever her field is. Or another kind of example I'll give of placing conditions is that the family, they'll say to the boy, okay, we'll give you our daughter, but the condition is that we want her and also you to move to this area, move to Birmingham. So the guy lives in London. So the girl's family said, okay, we'll give our daughter to you, but condition is that we don't want her to go to London, we want her to stay here, and you should also move here as well. So these are like some examples of conditions placed in marriage. Now what's the answer? Like what I mean is that, now if these conditions are not fulfilled, just say these conditions are not fulfilled, does it affect the marriage? Does it affect the nikah? So the answer is, according to the majority of the scholars, is that one should try to fulfill these conditions, otherwise one will be guilty of breaking a promise. Like what I mean by that is, if the husband made a condition, or accepted a condition from his wife that okay, I'll allow you to work, but after they got married, the husband says to his wife, no, you can't go to work. Or the girl said, okay, I'll get married to you, but condition is we have to remain in Birmingham. Husband accepted, they got married, but then the husband took her away to Manchester, to London, whatever. So now the masla or the ruling is that the marriage won't break. So what I'm trying to say is that you could place conditions, but if the conditions are not fulfilled, the marriage doesn't break. That's a key thing here. The marriage doesn't break. However, the husband or the wife, whoever made the condition, they will be guilty of breaking a promise. Guilty meaning, in other words, they will be sinful for breaking a promise. And everybody knows the hadith with regards to breaking a promise. The very famous hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that somebody who breaks a promise, he is like a munafiq and a hypocrite. Iza wa'ada akhlafa. Three signs of a munafiq and a hypocrite. One of them is Iza wa'ada, when he makes promises, akhlafa, he breaks the promise. So you'll get guna and sin for that, but more importantly, the marriage won't break. Okay, the marriage and the nikah won't break. So I said this is kind of like a modern trend now. I think the term they use is like clauses. Clauses. Yeah, prenuptial. So these kind of things, like certain clauses they put in. So obviously if it wasn't complied with, if it wasn't fulfilled, then yeah, fair enough, the nikah, the marriage will be intact. But obviously whoever made the promise, they will be guilty of breaking a promise. Okay, so in other words, what I'm trying to say is that the wife or whoever will not have an option to cancel or rescind the marriage. Obviously certain things where if it's like, the husband's not providing the wife, accommodation, like the husband, they got married, but he's basically left on the streets or something, or he's not providing her food or anything like that, then in that situation she can cancel or rescind the marriage. But as I said, if it's other kind of conditions about work and job and career and staying in one part of the city or the other, then by not fulfilling it, the marriage or the nikah doesn't break. Okay, now this particular slide, I'm just going to quickly go over it. Actually, we'll look at that later. We'll come back to that later when we look at polygamy. I'll mention it there, inshallah. Okay, now let's move on to the next page of the course book, page number 7. Again, we're not going to look at that in detail. That's more for home reading, Salatul Istikhara. Okay, but one or two things I need to mention. Obviously, because we're doing this kind of course in order, if that makes sense. So obviously, we've looked at love before marriage, we looked at love in marriage, then I mentioned virtues of marriage. Then I went on to mention the criteria of selecting a spouse. Then I went on to mention what kind of questions and some rules with regards to meeting a prospective suitor. Now the next section here to talk about is, on the handbook, is about istikhara. So now what the Sharia says is that, okay, after you've obviously made a decision, or you haven't made a decision about whether you want to go ahead with it or not, I look at it in two ways. Firstly, you haven't made a decision. You met the girl, the vibes you got were quite positive, but you're not 100% sure. So then what the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us is that we should then perform Salatul Istikhara. Okay, you then perform a Salatul Istikhara. And on that page number 7, I mentioned the procedure and in particular the dua you should read for Salatul Istikhara. Now, one point which a lot of people get mixed up when it comes to istikhara is that they think istikhara, you have to see a dream. Yeah? So you have to see a dream. Many brothers think that, okay, I want to get married to this girl, but I'm 50-50. So they do istikhara, but then they think that I need to see a dream of her. And if I don't see a dream, then that's it, I can't get married. Now, first and foremost, you don't have to see a dream. Let me get that clear. You don't have to see a dream. And to tell you, even if you were to see a dream, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's from Allah. Why? Because it's mentioned in the hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari, there are 3 types of dreams, isn't it? One is from shaitan, like scary dreams. One is from Allah. But then there's another type of dream, which is basically, you know what you think about during the day? You then see that at night time, in a vision. So obviously, if your mind at that time is like thinking about the girl who you want to marry, obviously there's a 1 in 3 chance that the dream you're going to see of that girl. But it doesn't mean that that dream's from Allah. It's just because you're just thinking about it all the time, so you then see that dream. The funny thing with brothers is that, they'll say, oh, I'm going to get married to this girl. Why? Because I've seen her in my dream. But obviously what they don't realize is that they've been thinking about her 24/7. Obviously, what are you going to see in your dream? You're not going to be seeing angels or Prophet ﷺ in the dream, are you? So as I was saying that, just because you see her in your dream, it doesn't necessarily mean it's from Allah and that, oh, that's a match made in heaven. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that. It's just like you're probably thinking about it too much. It could be that possibility as well. But anyway, if we look at the last paragraph, I've quoted Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, a very famous Shafi scholar. And he basically mentioned, look, istikhara is basically vibes. Yeah, what you feel in your heart. So you've basically said, like for example, you're unsure about someone, you've performed Salatul Istikhara, alright, you could see a dream, but just say you didn't see anything. So it doesn't mean that's it, you forget about it, no. It's what you feel in your heart, it's the vibes you get in your heart. So if the vibe is that actually, you know what, she's a good person, so you get these vibes. Obviously, those of you married will know that actually, you know, when you saw your wife for the very first time and then afterwards you went ahead with it, you had these kind of vibes in your heart. Yeah? So it's basically the vibes we're talking about. So if the vibes are good and it's positive, then you should go ahead with it. Obviously, there may be some situations where you've got good vibes, but you've got a doubt. Now, don't worry about the doubts, because those doubts which you have or which you're getting, they're from shaitan. Yeah? And naturally, you're going to have doubts. Naturally, you will have doubts in, like, when you get married or when you decide, okay, I'm going to get married to this particular girl. Until the nikah is done, and even afterwards, you're going to get doubts. Doubts meaning, like, is this going to work out? Yeah? Sometimes people get the doubts, so I hope she doesn't, like, you know, blank me on the day or something like that. She doesn't turn up or something. So you're going to get doubts all the way up to the nikah. And even after the nikah, initially for the first year, few years, you may even get doubts that, you know, when your relationship, when you're building it up, you may have this doubt that is it going to work out, is it going to work out? So don't worry too much about the doubts, because doubts are always going to be there. The key thing is that, you know, do you have some vibes? Do you basically think that, you know, this is something good, I can make this work? You know, it's this kind of vibes you get. If the vibes are positive, then you should go ahead with it. Any doubts you have on the side and so on, they're mainly from shaitan. Okay? But what I'm trying to say, the istikhara mainly is basically vibes, good feeling, and it's not necessary that you have to see a dream from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, now if you move on to the next page, page number 8. Obviously this was a question posed by one of the brothers. Marriage within one's caste. Okay, now I'm not sure how it works in the, obviously in the Pakistani kind of family, but something like you may have certain castes like Chaudhries. Chaudhries and
too many castes.
There are too many castes. Okay, so yeah, I think you probably have, like, say, Chaudhries who are considered to be more high class. No, they're not. Okay, but anyway, difference of opinion. Okay, so just an example, like, you have certain castes and so on. So now obviously the question is that, is this like allowed and so on? So again, it's similar to what I mentioned earlier on about marrying, like Pakistanis marrying within Pakistanis or Bangladeshis marrying within Bangladeshi. Look, if it is done with the intention of like compatibility, but that's the only intention. You had no other intention, that you didn't even look at her whether she's, the girl didn't look at the boy whether he's a Chaudhry or whether he's this, whether he's that. Her intention of marrying him or his intention of marrying her was purely based on deen, like she's religious, and also based on compatibility, that actually, you know what, she's kind of, I know her, she's from the same tribe or the same village as me, but I'm getting married to her because she's compatible, we've got same interests, we've got the same desires, and so on. So if the intentions were solely and purely that, then to get married to someone within your own caste, that would be allowed. But I mentioned there that, however, if it is done out of pride and arrogance, in other words, if your intention was, no, how can I marry someone who is not a Chaudhry? How can I marry someone who's from another caste? Yeah, so if your intention was that, based on pride and arrogance or boasting, or something like, you know, those ancestry lineage kind of based on that, then that would not be obviously allowed. Obviously the nikah will be done, the marriage will be done, but you know, your intention which you have, that will be wrong, that would be impermissible. Yeah, obviously nikah will be done, the marriage will be done, because obviously as long as she's a Muslimah, as long as she's a believer and obviously she says the offer and acceptance, there were 2 witnesses there, obviously nikah will be done. But looking at it, obviously the means which led to that marriage, so if her intention was just solely and purely because she happens to be from my tribe or my village, but you know she's a good person and compatibility, you looked at it through that way, you didn't even bother about what caste or what clan she was from, you just thought actually she's religious and compatible with me, that was your only intention, and you got married to her or she got married to that particular brother, then the nikah will be done, and obviously the means which led to that nikah happening will also be lawful and permissible. However, if it was based on pride and arrogance, or if it was based on those ancestral issues, then obviously the means which led to the nikah happening would be considered to be impermissible, disliked. However, obviously if they get married, then the marriage will be done, the marriage will be annulled. So that in a nutshell is the answer or the masla with regards to marriage within one's caste. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next section on page 8, which is a quite important section, about those women whom a person is not allowed to marry. So those people, those women whom you are not allowed to marry. Now, this ayat is actually what I've quoted in front of you, is a verse from the Holy Quran in Surah Nisa. It's mentioned there under the footnotes, verse 23. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a list of those people whom a man is not allowed to marry. Now I'm just going to go over this list because certain things, or there are certain issues which needs to be discussed. Some of them are straightforward. So Allah says that one is not allowed to marry his mother. حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ أُمَّهَاتُكُمْ. So you're not allowed to marry your mother. Number 2, you're not allowed to marry your daughters. You're not allowed to marry your daughter. Now the word daughter means whether it's your daughter Islamically or whether she is your daughter but Islamically she is not your daughter. So what does that mean? What do you reckon? What does that mean? Like, in reality she is your daughter, but Islamically she isn't. No.
You're not married to a person and you have a kid.
Yeah, very good, yeah. A child born out of wedlock. So basically they say boy and girl, they're not married, obviously they have an intimate relationship, the girl falls pregnant, but they're not married. So Islamically, that child is called illegitimate, i.e. it's not attributed to the father, it's attributed to the mother. So in his lineage, it'll be like, let's say his name is Abdul Rahman, it'll be Abdul Rahman, but he won't be son of his father, it'll be son of the mother's name. Because Islamically, he's not the father. In reality he is, but Islamically he's not the father. But same rule applies there as well. So whether it's your real daughter, whether it's your daughter in reality, but Islamically she's an, even then, you're not allowed to marry her. Number 3, your sisters. So again, you're not allowed to marry your sisters, whether your real sisters, half sisters, step sisters, you're not allowed to marry them. Your paternal aunts. So your paternal aunts in Urdu, we call them poopi. So you're not allowed to marry them. Your dad's sister. So you're not allowed to marry them, yeah? Your maternal aunts, i.e. khala, your mum's sister, you're not allowed to marry her as well. Now just one point here. Your uncle's wife, you can marry her. So your chachi, you can marry her. Just for example, if your uncle was to pass away, then if you married your chachi, your uncle's wife, that's allowed. Because remember, even though we call her auntie, but she's not a paternal aunt and nor is she a maternal aunt. So even though we call her auntie or chachi and so on, but even then she's not your real auntie, if that makes sense. So again, you can marry her. Okay? Remember all these words like aunties and so on. The thing is that anyone will just call them aunties. Yeah? It doesn't really mean that, but she's my auntie now and that's it. I don't have to do hijab, or she doesn't have to do hijab in front of me. Obviously, these are the rules here. So you have to be paternal aunts and maternal aunts. So they are unlawful to marry. Other aunties, like obviously next to neighbors, we call them aunties as well. Obviously, they're not, it doesn't mean that like you can't marry her, she's haram and lawful. No, you can marry her. If, say, for example, if she doesn't have a husband and so on, that would be allowed. Again, daughters of brothers. Okay, so we call them batijis in Urdu. So again, you can't marry them. Daughters of sisters, banji. Again, you can't marry them at all. Your mothers who suckled you. So again, this doesn't really apply in this day and age, but as was the case with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was suckled or he was breastfed not by his own mother, Hazrat Amina, but was breastfed and suckled by Hazrat Halima Sa'diyya radhiyallahu anha. So it was a custom in those days that when a child would be born, they would not actually be suckled or breastfed by their own mother. They would be breastfed and suckled by somebody else, like it was the case with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, if somebody did suckle, like a woman suckled a young child, then that woman becomes the foster mother of this particular child. And you are not allowed to marry this mother, because she's now become your mother in a way. So you can't marry her. Okay? It sometimes happens as well in our cultures, like sometimes there could be like an auntie, say, she breastfed the child. It could be such like when a child was born. Probably not, it won't be that common to tell the truth in the UK, because obviously if a child isn't taking milk, you've got formula milk, you've got cow and gate and so on for them. So, we got these, so they normally take that. But we're talking about, say, Pakistan, Bangladesh, where sometimes what happens, a child is born, and the mother, she's either too weak or she's bimar, she's ill, and she can't breastfeed the child. So what, generally speaking, sometimes happens is that, the mother's sister, or the auntie, kind of breastfeeds the child. So if that is the case, then obviously that auntie, even though she's your auntie, but she's also become your foster mother as well. So obviously, you won't be able to have allowed to marry her anyway, but also there's more respect now because she's also your foster mother. So these things you need to keep in mind. Similarly, sisters through suckling as well. In other words, just say if there was a woman who breastfed a boy and a girl. So that boy and girl have now become real brothers, and not like real brothers and sisters. In other words, they're not real brothers, but they're foster brothers and sisters. So again, nikah or marriage between the two would not be allowed and would not be permissible. Now regarding this one, sisters through suckling, you may be thinking, no, that doesn't happen. Actually, it does happen. Because I was actually, a couple of years ago, this question came to me, that it generally speaking happens between cousin brothers and sisters. Yeah? So in other words, there was an auntie, she obviously breastfed her own daughter, and she breastfed either her sister's son or her brother's son. Then what happened was that, because obviously you could get married to your cousin brothers and sisters, you can. So then afterwards, the cousin brother and sister, they want you to get married. But because they were breastfed by the auntie, so because of that reason, now they can't get married together. It will be unlawful and haram. So this point here, don't think that, it doesn't happen. It does happen. Again, more likely to happen in Pakistan, Bangladesh, these places, rather than in this country or in this day and age. Again, mothers of your wives, which we'll touch on later. So in other words, your mother-in-law. So your mother-in-law, she's haram upon you. And she is haram, what I mean, she's unlawful for you in such a way that you, even if you divorce the girl, you can never ever marry the mother-in-law. Just for example, you got married to a sister, as soon as you marry the sister, now even later on you divorce her, that's it. You know, her mother, she's permanently haram. You can't get married to her again. Even though you divorced the sister, even though the sister or your wife has passed away, and the mother's alive, you can't get married to the mother at all. Okay, so mother-in-laws, they are totally haram, totally unlawful. Again, stepdaughters are also unlawful as well, which we have mentioned. He explains there, with whom you've had intercourse. But if you have not had intercourse with them, then there is no sin on you. Now what does that mean? It means that, just for example, you married a sister and she has a daughter from a previous marriage. Now just say for argument's sake, you've married her and you haven't consummated the marriage, and before consummating the marriage you divorced her for some reason. You divorced her, gave her talaq. Now, because you haven't consummated the marriage, you can actually get married to her daughter, your stepdaughter. You can get married to her. However, if you've consummated the marriage with that sister, in other words, you've had intercourse with her, then her daughter from a previous marriage would be now unlawful and haram upon you. Okay? This is all mentioned in the Quran. You can always check it up. As says Surah Nisa, verse 23. It's all mentioned in the Quran, that a sister, if she has a daughter from a previous marriage, so you can get married to that stepdaughter if you haven't consummated the marriage. However, if you consummated the marriage, then that stepdaughter will also become unlawful and haram upon you. Some of the rules about marriage with one's son-in-law is not permissible. So again, mother-in-law I've already explained. The last bullet point on page 8, as long as a sister is married to her husband, it is not permissible for another sister to marry this brother-in-laws of hers. Okay? So in other words, just say you're married to a particular woman. So whilst you are married to this woman, you can't marry her sister. وَأَن تَجْمَعُوا بَيْنَ الْأُخْتَيْنِ, as mentioned in the Quran. So you are not allowed to be married to her sister. Okay, so I think everybody knows that. Obviously, if you divorce her or she was to pass away and then you want to marry her sister, then that would be allowed, that would be permissible. And regarding this last point, I want to clarify something here. Sometimes brothers ask these questions that our sister-in-law, so in other words, our wife's sister, is she a mahram? Mahram meaning that is she someone who we could come in front and she doesn't have to do hijab in front of us? Or is she a ghair mahram? In other words, she needs to be, be covered when she's in front of us. So what's the ruling? People ask this question. Is she mahram or is she ghair mahram? Is she a mahram or is she a strange woman? How do we treat our sister-in-laws? And also our sister-in-laws, say from our brother's side, in other words, our brother's wives, how do we treat her? Is she, I think we call them Barbies, so how do we treat them? Is she a strange woman or is she, say for example, a mahram? Now I want to begin with this one here firstly about sister-in-laws from your wife's side. Remember, sister-in-laws from your wife's side, she is a strange woman. Okay? So what I mean by that is, when she is in front of you or when you are in front of her, there has to be a level of parda, a level of hijab. She can't be totally relaxed in front of you. She can't take off her headscarf and joke around and sit right next to you. That's not going to be allowed. Yeah? That's not going to be allowed. Now some of you may be thinking, well, that's obvious, isn't it? The reason I'm saying this is because some people, unfortunately, misinterpret this verse of the Quran. And they say that, because you're not allowed to marry because when you're married to your wife, you're not allowed to be married to a sister, they then assume that she's a mahram. Like, these women which I mentioned here, daughters, mothers, you're not allowed to marry them. So because you're not allowed to marry them, what are they? They're your mahram. In other words, they don't have to do proper parda and hijab in front of you. So some people think that, because when you are married to your wife here, you're not allowed to marry to be married to a sister, so they automatically think, oh, do you know, my wife's sister, she's my mahram. So then what happens is that they get a bit too close to their wife's sister, and then obviously, as you know, what happens is that it leads to something unlawful happening between the two. Now, and what then happens is that he actually breaks the family. He breaks the family where, and we look at it, and also at the same time I mentioned the brother's side as well, that remember your brother's wife, they are considered to be ghair mahram as well. So they are strange women as well. So just because she's your brother's wife, it doesn't mean that, oh, I could be proper, totally relaxed in front of her, or she should be relaxed in front of me, like not doing the hijab and headscarf, and you know she's sitting next to me and so on, and you going out together. No, that's not going to be allowed. And as I said here, that do not insist in those. That's why Prophet ﷺ has mentioned a hadith. That what did he say in the hadith? I'm not sure whether you've heard this hadith or not. Alhamdu al-maut. That in-laws are considered like death. In other words, the same way you should kind of like be scared of death, you should also be scared of your in-laws. In what way? Because as I said before, like, it's one of those relationships where people think of it to be harmless. Yep, that's what happens. You know, like when you come with other women, they're really proper strict. Like, you know, we can't look at her and so on. And you know, they do proper hijab and parda, and sisters with other men, they do proper hijab and parda. When it comes to the in-laws, and when it comes to sister-in-laws, whether from the wife's side or brother's side, they're proper relaxed. Even sisters are too relaxed. Now, what they don't realize, and what the hadith mentions, is that in-laws are like death. In other words, if you get too close to them, and you, because obviously remember, Allah's got control over our hearts. Shaitan, you know, has a say in our feelings sometimes as well. May Allah forbid, but let's say, for example, you then start falling in love with your wife's sister, right, or with your brother's wife. And obviously, when you then start falling in love, and she also has the same feelings as well, then what happens is that it leads to zina, that's one. But also number two, it just breaks up the family. What I mean breaks up, what I mean by, one is like, say for example, if the husband just runs away from home, or wife runs away from home with another man. One is if that other man happens to be someone like your brother. One is if the man who runs away from the home happens to be the wife's sister. Yeah, you know, think about it. It's like zina is bad, but when it's with someone who you actually trusted, that, you know, wife's sister, you know, she's my sister, you know, she's not going to do something like that, is she? Or he's my brother, he's not going to do something like that. So when it's with someone who you trust, then it breaks the family. It totally annihilates the soul of that family. And we'll see that you know, that family never ever, you know, because what happens in that community, everyone then starts talking about the family. You know, look, the brother ran away with his brother's wife, or the husband ran away with his wife's sister. And you can imagine, especially in one of our, you know, community, we like to talk and gossip a lot. So it just like, you know, what could have happened is that only Alan Rock knew about it. Within a matter of few hours, the entire world knows about it, yeah? So then that's what happens, and it kind of breaks that family to pieces. So this is why it's very important that in-laws and so on, we should maintain a bit of like level of contact. Obviously nothing wrong with just saying hello or something, salam, hi you and so on, but not like we see sometimes too close. It can't be too close, because too close is going to be a big of a problem. Okay, moving on to the next page, page number 9. Just mention a few things about adoption here. So remember, when you adopt a child, so a girl, a young girl, you are allowed to marry that girl. Like, in other words, adoption is not considered that that girl is your real daughter. So when you adopt a girl, it doesn't mean that she's your real daughter. When you adopt a boy, it doesn't mean that this boy now is your real son. So in other words, if you want to marry this girl, that would be allowed. If, say for example, the father passes away, or the guy who adopted, he passes away, and his wife wants to marry the boy who the father adopted, that would also be allowed and permissible. So what I'm trying to say is that adoption, if you adopt a boy or a girl, they're not considered to be your real son, they're not considered to be your real daughter. So you could get married to them. Can anybody think of an example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? It happened with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Can anybody think of which, who was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam adopted son? Does anybody know? Yeah, very good. Hazrat Zayd bin Haris radhiyallahu anhu. And does anybody know who he was married to? Okay, he was married to someone called Hazrat Zainab bint Jahash. So now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanting to basically eradicate that custom that your adopted son is considered to be like a real son. Allah to eradicate that custom, when Hazrat Zayd divorced Hazrat Zainab, Allah ordered Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to marry Hazrat Zainab. Because look, if Hazrat Zayd was considered to be like Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's real son, he wasn't his adopted son, but if he was considered as his real son, would the Prophet be allowed to have married Hazrat Zayd's wife, i.e. his daughter-in-law? Would he be allowed to have married her? No, he wouldn't have any. Even though he divorces her, you're not allowed to marry your daughter-in-law. So, by Allah ordering Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, no, you have to marry Hazrat Zainab, it was basically Allah telling Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that you practically get rid of this custom, this belief with the Arabs or the people of ignorance during the days of ignorance had, that your real son is considered to be, your adopted son is considered to be like a real son. You need to get rid of that belief from people. So what did Prophet ﷺ do? He then got married to Hazrat Zainab. So from this we can understand that adopted sons or daughters, they're not considered to be your real son. And then lastly, just explains, all the relations which become haram on account of lineage also become haram on account of breastfeeding. In other words, that if, as I was explaining, a child got breastfed or suckled, then all the relations in terms of foster brothers, foster uncles, foster aunties, they all are included in the impermissibility. In other words, you're not allowed to marry that particular person. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next point on the next section on page 9. And this is a slightly tricky one, but it needs to be highlighted. Tricky in terms of slightly technical, but it needs to be highlighted to the brothers and also the sisters upstairs about this particular rule. Because again, sometimes it happens as well and people don't realize the severity of this particular rule. Now this rule, if you have a look at page 9, is called Hurmatul Musahara. It's actually in the Quran as well, this word. It's called Hurmatul Musahara. And basically, what is Hurmatul Musahara? Hurmatul Musahara is where there was some kind of contact or relations between a man and a woman. Now, if there is such a contact between a man and a woman, or lawful relations between a man and a woman, then what happens is the man's ancestors and descendants. When I say man's ancestors, I mean that guy's father, grandfather, and his descendants, i.e. sons, become haram upon this woman. Become haram upon this woman. And this woman's ancestors, i.e. mother, grandmother, and her descendants, i.e. daughters, become haram upon him. Okay? So I'll just explain that again. It's a relationship where a man and a woman, so I haven't used the word husband and wife because it doesn't have to be husband and wife, it could be like a relationship, an unlawful relationship even, between a man and a woman. So what happens because of this relationship in the future, so even though this girl or this woman at the moment doesn't have any children, it doesn't matter, in the future, so her ancestors and descendants become haram upon this man and also like to this man. And this man's ancestors and descendants become haram upon this particular girl. Okay? So everybody got the broad picture. I'll just like stuck the polls down. But that in a nutshell is a broad definition of hurmat-e-musahara. Now, if we could just have a look at the bullet points which are under that section, I'm just now going to explain how can this relationship happen. So he explains that either when lawful intercourse takes place or unlawful intercourse. So that is one way there could be some kind of relations. That the man has lawful intercourse with this woman. When I say lawful intercourse, I'm referring to the word, why you come here for? What's that? Marriage, yeah? So lawful relationship is referring to marriage. Or it could be unlawful relationship, like zina or adultery. So what I'm trying to say is that when a man has intercourse with this woman, lawful relations, like in the terms of marriage, her mother, ancestors and her descendants become haram upon him. And that's what I explained earlier on, that your mother-in-law will always be haram upon you. Yeah? And this person's father, grandfather, and if he has sons, whether with her or somebody else, become haram upon this woman here, this sister here. Okay? So that's one way of establishing this relationship. The other way, number two, is contact. I lust in either the mature or close to mature boy or girl when they make physical contact. So what I mean by that? A man, he touches a woman. Touches a woman with lust. And what I mean by lust, like proper like, he held her with the intention of, committing something bad with her. So he touched her with lust. Or a woman touched the man with lust. Yeah? The woman touched the man with lust. And I explained there, like, it has to be like, the touching has to be such that it's more like skin to skin. Obviously, if he touched her on I don't know, she was wearing a coat, say, then obviously you may not feel the warmth of her body. So it's more like either skin to skin or a thin piece of cloth where he could actually feel her warmth. Or the woman touches the man, he's wearing like a t-shirt or something thin, and she felt the man's warmth. Yeah? And when they were touching each other, there was like lust there. Yeah, there was lust, like, if there weren't other people there, then they would have committed zina. And if you look at the third bullet point explains about, or if he looks at a woman's private parts. So I mentioned that, the inside of the private parts, if he looks at her, again with lust and desires. Okay? So these are three ways, to establish this hurmat-e-musahara. He either has intercourse with her, he touches her with lust, number two, or number three is that he looks at her private parts, or vice versa, the woman looks at the man's private parts. Now, if one of these three things are found, then that woman's mother, grandmother become haram upon the man, and the man's father and grandfather become haram upon the woman. Yep? So everybody understood that, yep? Now, you may be thinking, how on earth that's going to happen? How does it occur? How is it practical in this day and age? I'll give you an example how it's practical in this day and age. Just say man and woman, they got married, yeah? This man, this woman got married. Now what happened was the man and his wife's mother, so his mother-in-law, just say she happens to be quite young as well. So obviously they got a bit too close for comfort, shall I say. You know, they were like touching each other or something happened like that. So what happened, the man touched his mother-in-law with proper like lust and desire. Like, what I mean, like proper lust, desire, like obviously felt the warmth of her body, you know, to the extent like mentioned about what is the definition of lust. You know, so we're not going to go over that here. But just like, you know, erection, you know, those, you know, these kind of things, they had a proper lust at that time. Now, if that was the case, he touched his mother-in-law with proper lust and desires. Now, let's look at it. What happens? This mother-in-law, this woman who he touched, her mother will become haram upon him. Okay, that's okay, because her mother's probably dead or something, it doesn't really apply. But her what? Her descendants, who happens to be what? His wife, will now become haram upon him. Yeah, so everybody understand how severe this is. Yeah, I'll give you another example. Happened with someone a few years back. Father and the son and his stepmother. Son and his father's second wife. So again, there was something went on, some hanky-panky, whatever went on, yeah, between the two. So again, there was some touching, whatever, so only Allah knows best what exactly, but something happened where there was some lust and desires when he touched her. So now you tell me the stepmother, so basically this man, his son here, who was in his 20s, and obviously his stepmother was quite young. She was like in her 20s, 30s, you could say, herself. So he touched her with lust, or something went on between them. Now you explain the ruling here. Her ancestors, descendants become haram upon him. So that's not a problem. But his ancestor, i.e. his father, will now become haram upon her. So basically the father who's married to this second wife, the stepmother, because the son had committed something with his stepmother, the son's ancestors, i.e. father, will now become haram upon him. Oh, sorry, upon her, sorry. It was a him, then there's definitely a problem. Yeah, upon her. Yep. So that's how Ummat al-Musara works. I said it's very tricky, this particular, but I've just mentioned in a nutshell how it works so that brothers are aware that it is kind of serious, it could happen and so on. So that's why it's also very important as well that mother-in-laws as well, I said fathers with daughter-in-laws, they shouldn't be that close. Obviously it doesn't mean that you can't say hi, hello, salam to them, but not like they're touching each other and hugging each other, they shouldn't be that close, if that makes sense. Okay, I'm just going to move on to, I'm just going to quickly look at that slide and then inshallah we'll go on to the Q&A session. Next page 10 about miscellaneous rulings, I've just already given some examples there. Just very quickly this slide here about girlfriend-boyfriend relationship. So again, I think everybody knows that such a relationship is not allowed in Islam. But I'll just mention it briefly here because unfortunately many of our youngsters, in particular youngsters who are at college or university, are unfortunately involved. So I just mention a few things here like how to save yourself from falling into this trap. And 2 points I mentioned here. One is to abstain from freely mixing and also not to look at the opposite sex. In other words, not to look at the opposite gender. There's some other ways, but I just mentioned 2 points here. So one is abstain from free mixing. That's why it's very important in Islam that it's separate, it's segregated, because the beauty of Islam is that it always looks at means, trying to eradicate the means before it's too late or before it goes out of hand. That's the beauty of the Sharia. That's why all the rules are mentioned about nikah. Why do we get married? So that we don't let our lust and desires go over the top. So, just have a look. So there's two things here to remember when it comes to girlfriend-boyfriend relationship, that how to save ourselves from it. Number one is not to freely mix, and number two, looking as well, because even in the Quran as well, where Allah says, كُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ, that believing men, they should lower their gazes, وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُمْ, and they should protect their modesty, their private parts. And scholars have mentioned that if you look at the link, Allah mentions firstly, lower your gaze, then He says protect your private parts. Why? Because there's a link between the two. Because where does all this like zina and relationship, these kind of things happen, is when a man is not controlling his gazes. When he's just like looking around at every single woman who comes on the street, or to walking on the street, then that's when his desires escalate into zina and immorality. So these are just a couple of things, and I mentioned a hadith there as well. Do not look a second look, follow the first. In other words, the first look, if it's accidental, that is allowed, but then do not look at the second time, yeah? So only one glance is allowed and not another glance. Can we look at each other? So we just leave it there for this particular session. Inshallah, any brothers have any questions they would like to ask, then they can do so now. Then afterwards we will have a break until 3 o'clock, inshallah. One good thing about it is that the time goes so quick, so everyone's enjoying themselves. Brother Ismail.
What would you suggest, in school? Sometimes you have to do group work, and then you put in a group with a girl in there as well. What would you suggest you do?
Try your best to avoid proper direct looking. So if you need to look up and then speak to her, and then you can just turn your face away. But try direct looking into her eyes all the time. That makes sense. If you need to just glance at her and then turn your face away, that's okay. There's leeway or some scope of flexibility. But looking at her all the time, or staring at her, or does that make sense? Or looking at her eyes and how beautiful they are, something like that, then that should be avoided. Basically for the sisters, the question the brother asked was in group work or at school or colleges where you do group work with sisters, then how to go about that. I just mentioned that you should look down and keep your gazes low. So how should we then counteract that? So that was the answer I gave to the brother.
The Hurmat al-Musahara, you said that for the woman, the entire lineage of the man would be unlawful for her. But for her daughter, that lineage would still be lawful, wouldn't it?
What do you mean?
Okay, you have the two people.
Yeah.
And the woman has this whole entire lineage that is unlawful for her now. But
the woman's ancestor descendants become haram upon the man.
Yeah. But if the man's son, would he be allowed to be married into that lineage?
The man's son?
Yeah.
The man's son is allowed. Basically, the brother was asking the question that in Hurmat al-Musara, which we were just discussing 5 or so minutes ago, that ancestors become haram upon the girl, and the girl's ancestors and descendants become haram upon the man. So the brother was asking, how about the man's son? Would he be allowed to get married into the girl's lineage or vice versa? Then that is allowed. That would be allowed, that would be permissible. Okay, there's some question from some sisters. Would you encourage asking about a man's past relationship? So in other words, when you are meeting the brother, should you ask him about his past relationship? Again, there's no, I think personally,
Shah, I want to ask a question. Earlier on, when we were discussing the condition of marriage, one girl can say, I'm doing this medical studies, and I want to be a doctor. We don't want to have a children. We can get married, but we don't want to have children for like 3 years or 4 years. So the same thing applies to the man. He can say that, oh no, I'm on your service and I'm traveling this and that. We don't have a children for 3 or 4 years. In other words, it's a birth control. Is the birth control halal in Islam?
Yeah, in terms of birth control, I'm going to mention it later when we look at it. Birth control, contraception, we look at it later. Okay, so I was asking, looking at that question, would you encourage asking about a man's past relationship? It depends on the individual, this answer. If, say, for example, the sister is such that actually she wants the guy who she's married to be like, well, not perfect, but you know, to have no skeletons in the cupboard, basically. So if she wants the guy to be like, or similarly the guy wants the girl who's married to have obviously no past relationship with the man, then obviously, you know, you should ask that question. If, say, for example, if you're of that nature that, you know what, everyone deserves a second chance, you know, so even though the girl may have had a relationship or a fling with another man, obviously before they met, or the man may have done the same, but he's more open-minded in terms of he's more willing to know what everybody, you know, has a bad moment in life, they've done tawbah, they've repented, and now you're looking more like at now, what is she now? Obviously, if she's like still got the habit of flirting with other men, or the other way around, that the sister wants to marry a brother, but the brother's got a habit of flirting with other women, then obviously you may need to, and if that offends you, if you think that's a bit wrong, then you may need to think about it. But if it happened something before 5-10 years ago and they moved on and you've done tawbah and you've repented and so on, then you shouldn't really touch about it. You shouldn't really think about it. But again, it depends on the brother or sister. So I'll just take one more question and then I'll do the rest later. Yes, so once married, is it okay for your father-in-law to see you without hijab? Without hijab, obviously, if you're just referring to without the headscarf on, then yes, it is permissible because in front of mahram men, like for a sister, in front of, say, a father or father-in-law and so on, she doesn't have to be fully covered. So she can, say, for example, leave her hair exposed, but obviously it's preferable that she kind of covers it so that the father-in-law doesn't get any kind of temptations or any kind of wrong thoughts. But technically, she will be allowed to uncover because the father-in-law is a mahram, and she will be allowed to, like, say, show her hair and show, I don't know, some parts of her arms and so on. Obviously, she can't show other parts of the body and so on, but just say if the arm or a bit of the hair is exposed in front of the father-in-law, technically it is allowed. But obviously, more out of precaution or taqwa, it would be best that she doesn't fully kind of expose all her body. Father-in-law. Yeah, and also the same also applies for father, mother-in-law, parents, aka husband, so I'm not sure if that's actually the aka is not me. If that sister wants to resend that question again, then I'll answer with it. Shall we leave it there for a small break? Welcome to all.